All right. Hi, guys. I'm here with another early show. Um, I wanted to do something for my UK audience. I know that there were many who have reached out to me and asked me to present on Fears watches specifically. And I thought, what better occasion than this when they're actually coming out with this very interesting watch that they have produced in collaboration with another British watchmaker, namely Christopher Ward. And there's so much to talk about this watch, so much to add. And I think this will be a good chance for us to do that. Good morning, Mike David. Good morning, man. All right, so I wanted to carve out 2 hours in the middle of the day here in Los Angeles to do a show for my UK audience, UK followers, and also to present on Fears watches in general. And what better way to do that than talk about this watch, which they call Fears Christopher Ward Alliance 01. And we'll break down that name and we'll talk about the watch specifically. But just as a forward, as a preface to the conversation, I do a lot of presentations on this channel on watches that appeal to a more accessible segment that provide an interesting entry point to quality horology and sometimes even luxury. And Fears, in many ways, is a brand that straddles both of these ends, and pretty successfully, if I might add. I've done a lot of shows in the past to talk about watches that retail for less than $1,000. But there's a segment that I'm increasingly going to address, which is perhaps affordable luxury, accessible luxury. I think when it comes to some Swiss brands, perhaps names like Maurice Lacroix or Frédéric Constant come to mind. But Fears is exactly in that range, right? $4,000 to $6,000 roughly. When all is said and done, you might say 35 to 5,000 or 3,000 to 5,000 pounds. They're exactly at that sweet spot where you can get a quality product, something that relies heavily on traditional design and the conservative codes of horology, while putting an original spin on it. And ultimately, I think they address a certain gap in the market that is being left out by some of the Swiss brands that are really trying hard to upmarket themselves. And I'm talking to you here, Tag Heuer and Omega, who provide the same product over and over. And you might even speak of a drop in quality in the recent years. But they keep trying to sell those watches for more and more without much justification. Omega, I think, had 6 price increases in the last calendar year. There's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for that. Inflation can't be an excuse for 6 discrete price increases. Come on. All right, so let's jump right in. Let's talk about the context of this release. This is actually the first effort, the first enterprise on the part of British watch and clockmakers, which is the professional association that brings together about 75 different brands from the British Isles, including Ireland. And one of their premises for establishing this alliance was to encourage collaboration between these different makers, right? And I've talked about that in the past in assessing the watch market myself. And I said in times of economic crisis, we will increasingly see collaborations between different watchmakers, and especially between watchmakers in that segment of independents or micro brands, right? They will try to pull together their resources to either find more ingenious and innovative ways of marketing their product, or even better, like this, for us watch nerds, they will actually come together, bring together their own levels and specialities, their expertise, and give us something new that we hadn't seen before in their catalog. So this is actually the first alliance collaboration that British watch and clockmakers achieved, and they brought together Fears Watches and Christopher Ward. Just a word on Christopher Ward, and it is very pertinent to this watch as well, since it uses their movement, their caliber, that C09 jumping hour caliber. You know that they have been hot in the press more recently for their Bel Canto, which uses the same module to provide a striking watch, no pun intended, meaning that they have a watch, and let's bring that up very quickly. They have their Bel Canto, C1 Bel Canto, which they now are releasing in different iterations and various colors with a deposit. I don't know their times of delivery, really. I haven't looked into it, but they have been increasingly popular. And again, they provide something rather unique at that price point that we don't necessarily see from other brands, right? Yes, it's not a minute repeater. Yes, it's not a very original looking design, even though there are elements in it that are pretty ingenious and pretty inspiring. But ultimately, where else can you find a product like this at that price point of £3,000, roughly speaking? So that's relevant because this Fears Christopher Ward Alliance 01 watch uses that same module, that same jumping hour module, which they had converted in Bel Canto to provide a strike at each passing hour, to provide, of course, a jumping hour watch. And it also, I think, is significant again because jumping hour otherwise is a prestige complication again that we don't often see at this price point. And we will get to that in a second, because there's a little bit of a caveat when it comes to the price point and ordering of this particular watch. And that's why I started with emphasizing that this is an alliance, this is a collaboration made possible by British watch and clock makers. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Lovely to see you. So I applaud Fears, Christopher Ward, and British watch and clock makers
for putting British watchmaking on the map like this, and at the price point where this sort of prestige complication is usually not available. Now, the list price of this watch is 3,950 pounds sterling, including VAT, and 3,291.67 pounds sterling, excluding the VAT, excluding the tax, which is probably what they will offer it to you if you are ordering from abroad, which will, of course, be then subject to customs, duties, and other fees, depending where you are on the world and which you would be responsible for. Now, this watch is being made available on January 27th, so this Friday, but it will only be made available to members of the Alliance, members of the British Watch and Clockmakers. Now, don't despair. Because again, it's 50 pieces. If they didn't put that extra manner of qualification, I think there would be much more disappointment and much more pain and misery on the part of interested parties. The membership itself costs 55 pounds sterling, and having known UK fans in general, from the sports arena, for the most part, I know how enthusiastic you are about supporting one of your own, supporting your own people. So it should be a small sacrifice, 55 pounds sterling, to become a member of the British Watch and Clockmakers, where you will have access to certain membership benefits and perks. And you would also be supporting British watchmaking, English horology, in a very direct and, I would say, significant way. And that membership should have been signed up, should have gone through by January 26th by midnight. So I would urge you to go now to the link that I will send. And I think it's pretty straightforward to become a member, to join the club, as they are saying on their website, to qualify for the purchase. Once again, I'm doing this because I'm excited about the watch. I am just getting to know the brand, and I have absolutely no stake in encouraging British watchmaking whatsoever. And not that I have anything against it, but I just want to emphasize that I'm not in any way paid for this. I don't benefit from it in any shape or form. I do, however, encourage everyone, wherever you're in the world, whether you're in India, in China, in the US, in UK, to meaningfully support the watchmakers who are local to you, to significantly support, put your money where your mouth is, to establish and sustain that ecosystem, which makes it possible for those of us to collect watches. And that goes through not only buying watches, not only investing your money and also emotions, of course, into prestige brands, but also supporting your local watchmakers, for repairs, for other kinds of daily needs, and also, of course, supporting your local watchmakers when it comes to this particular scale by buying the original products they present to you. Thank you, Osi. Thank you for the opinion. This is actually exactly my cup of tea. Again, if I uh, didn't have a particular goal for this year, this would be, in fact, a watch that I would go for a number of reasons. Let's start with the one that is, I think, more objective rather than subjective. I mentioned before that the jumping hour or jump hour complication is a prestige complication. And I think also because of the way that it basically gives you this distilled image of the dial, of the face of the watch, it is also the kind of complication that gives free reign to the full expression of the artisanal craft that an a watchmaker, and that an independent watchmaker especially, can bring to the table, right? Which is fascinating, right? Jumping hour is a complication, is a prestige complication, but it actually simplifies the face of the watch in such a way that the creativity and the originality of that particular maker can seriously shine through. And in this case, that is expressed in a number of ways. As you can see, there are two rings in on the face of the watch inside the dial that both divide the space pretty effectively, and that, I think, add an extra level of elegance to the watch. Once again, as it happens, Happy New Year to my friends who follow the lunar calendar. Happy Chinese New Year as well, specifically to our Chinese audience. Here's another watch that brings us a unique shade of red. Again, it's generally pretty hard to find these deep reds on the dial of a watch. So just on that account, I think this could be an interesting watch to pursue for a lot of collectors. And there are very interesting levels and layers of red that are going through. On the periphery of the dial, you have sunburst finish. At the center of the dial, where you have the indication for the minutes, you have a radial guilloche, which gives immense depth to the dial. And there is also that minute ring, which is slightly stepped, which adds to that depth. And I think it's very elegant and very masterful that both of those rings, which separate out, in one case, the center of the dial for the minutes display, and the smaller circle, the smaller ring at 12 o'clock, which displays the jumping hours, are actually hand polished and finished. So it adds again a very unique sparkle to the center of the dial, and I think ultimately results in a very elegant watch. And again, to add to that levels and shades of the colors displayed on the watch, and to the interplay between deep red and the silver of the stainless steel case of the watch, the printing on the dial, and these minutes are printed on that center dial. They are actually done in silver rather than white, which complements the script of the Fears brand, and of course the England printing at 6 o'clock. So an incredibly balanced and interesting piece that offers something uniquely beautiful and something also that is horologically impressive. Now, on that note, some Some might simply say, "Hey, this this watch is listed at 4,000 pounds sterling, right? Again, almost 3,300 without the VAT, and you are eventually having a movement that is built on an ETA 2824-2 or Celita SW200. I would say, yes, sure. I understand. I understand that concern. This is the C09 jumping hour complication is a module that is built on ETA or its Celita clone. No doubt about it. It is a unique complication. It is finished, of course, at a different level, but at the end of the day, the watch remains, the movement remains to be built on an ETA caliber. But ETA caliber or not, you simply don't have any other options for a jumping hour watch or for a jump hour complication at this price point, right? You have to go at least twice as high to touch anything similar to this, even in the secondary market, I should say. So the concerns are valid, but in my opinion, I think this is a different level. Again, from a personal standpoint, I'm not a huge fan of the Bel Canto for that reason, because I don't see any use in a striking hour watch. I don't see any utility or inspiration in a striking hour watch, whereas a jump hour watch appeals to me both from an aesthetic standpoint and from an horological standpoint as well, because I think it is really boiled down to the bare enjoyment of that jumping, of that shutter click, apparently in this particular instance, that you experience at the top of the hour, which is very unique. And again, a lot of the old school jumping hour watches sometimes have a display that blocks the jumping hour at 12 o'clock. Once again, here you have some design principle, some effort to put full attention to that beautiful moment at the top of the hour, where, for example, here the 3 would flip to 4. It's not a lack of second hand. I mean, it's a jumping hour watch. It's certainly not made for that particular purpose. Again, this is not a one watch guy's watch for sure. I mean, you want to have, yes, you want to have a watch in your collection that displays seconds. Maybe you like hacking seconds. Maybe you want that sort of precision and accuracy from your watch. By all means, but the jumping hour watch does not necessarily need a seconds hand or a seconds display, though, you know, some of that is very tastefully and beautifully done. Again, at what price point? I mean, FP Jaune Vagabondage, for example, right? Let's take a look at that. I think we are talking about, I don't even know, honestly. It was a limited series of 68 watches, I think. But I think the pricing was somewhere around $60,000, if not more, at list. So if you are so privileged enough to buy it, I think it was like 60,000 for the platinum, and 58 for the white gold. Or no, I think they're all okay. Platinum 60,000, and then this was like 58,000. And in this case, in fact, you have the jumping hour here. Actually, the other digital display is the seconds. So that's a running seconds that goes around and around. And that the minutes are displayed by the hand in the middle. But again, you are talking about a watch here that costs multiple times the Fears Christopher Ward Alliance 01. Yeah, I think, to me, again, what I prefer is the simplicity, is the purity, is that no nonsense, elegant display of the minutes and the hour, rather than the precision of the seconds, right? It doesn't need. I mean, you can have a jumping hour watch that's chronometer certified, which is not the case here, of course, just so we are clear. But clearly that's not at the forefront in most jump hour watches. I had the pleasure more recently to take a look at the Anderson Genève jump hour watch, which they had produced for their 40th anniversary. And again, that's a level of elegance and finish and work in the dial that is completely surpassing perhaps Fear's Christopher Ward Alliance 1, but it is also a watch that's 10, 15 times more costly. But again, the idea is you have a pure display that draws the attention to the dial, that draws the attention to the jumping hour, which is beautifully placed at the center of the watch, which is actually not the center of the dial necessarily, but where your eye is drawn to 12 o'clock. And then you have a minutes display at 6 o'clock. So that is actually a very normal and not only acceptable, but desirable display for a jumping hour watch. And yeah, of course, I mean, the case shape is a cushion shape, but obviously, again, this watch's competitor is not a Panerai by any stretch of imagination. I mean, this is a very different genre of a watch. Now, that being said, I said there are two reasons why I like this watch. One, because it offers a prestige complication at an accessible price point, right? It's not cheap by any means. We are still talking about a watch that almost touches £4,000 sterling that will cost you around the same amount to import elsewhere from the UK. But considering how similar watches cost usually 10 times as much or minimally 2-3 times as much on the secondary market, I think this suddenly becomes a very attractive option. But hey, Eric L., just to also satisfy you, yes, I do love the case shape when it comes to this, because it is a case shape that reminds me of the old school waterproof and weatherproof Rolex Oyster cases, which were supplied to Officine Panerai when they were, in fact, making those muscular utilitarian dive watches for the Italian Navy and their combat diving units. So I do love the case shape. and that can be a way for us to segue into the larger conversation. But I do want to say a few things about the case. Fears, at the end of the day, again, uh, is a British watchmaker like Christopher Ward, but it is in a way a heritage maker that stopped existing in the 70s and was revived. So in that regard, it's more similar to Smith's than Christopher Ward. In either case, they do uh, have a similar approach that's perhaps a little more centered in the British Isles than Christopher Ward. They do source a lot of the components of their watches from abroad. Like, for example, this watch, of course, a movement of which the base comes from Switzerland, which is then finished by Christopher Ward. The dials usually come from Germany, even if they are finally finished by Fears in Bristol. And I believe they might be making the cases actually um, in the UK, in Bristol. Yes, the original OC, as you are saying, Laurent Ferrier also has a similar case shape for their Galet models, for their square watches. So it's, I haven't seen anyone blaming Laurent Ferrier for copying Panerai and expecting people to boycott them and buy Panerai instead. Especially, again, when you look into the history, the Panerai case is not a Panerai case. The Panerai case is the original Rolex Oyster. The case here is in stainless steel, 4.5 millimeters in diameter, so it's slightly larger than Fears's standard models. And has a variety of different finishes, I think, that ultimately complements that interplay of deep red and silver and the various finishes that we have seen on the dial between the hand polished finishing of the rings to the guilloche finish of the center of the radial dial, as well as the sunburst finish on the periphery that beautifully completes it. And I think the burgundy strap is also a great complement. Speaking of how things are finished, finally, in addition to the Alliance hallmarks that will engrave and decorate the watch in a discreet way, on the underside of the lugs, there will be also a number from 1 to 50 that will inscribe the exclusivity of this particular watch. Again, it's only limited to 50 examples. So while you can, and if you would like to support British watchmaking, in either case, become a member at £55 sterling of British watch and clockmakers. Support this alliance, and this is their first collaboration, which they make exclusively available to their members. You'll be sent a link in the morning of January 27th on Friday to be able to purchase this watch. And let's take a look at Fears's offerings more generally. Right. The hour hand is, of course, slightly short because of how things are laid out on the dial. Right. A little, a little longer, it would block or unpleasantly intrude at with the hours aperture at the top of the clock. I think it's for that reason perfectly sized, but I also understand if it bugs you. And again, going back to that case shape, it is one of the reasons I like this. It adds a level of muscularity and sportiness that you won't find in a lot of jumping hour watches. So I can't really resent that. And of course, I love the onion crown, which goes back to that design inspiration, which Fears, by the way, of course, never hid. Right, one of the collaborations they did, they have been known to do these sorts of collaborations. Fears has done these sorts of collaborations before, and one they did earlier was with Topper Jewelers, right? And that you can clearly criticize as a Panerai homage, right? I can't argue with that because they have done these versions of the Brunswick 40, which have Roman numerals at the top of the dial and uh, Arabic numerals at the lower half of the dial. And that's clearly the California dial that has been a trademark of that vintage look that is associated with this case, right? In that case, I understand, hey, that's like copying from Rolex vintage that's biting off Panerai style. When you have a time only watch that's expressed like this with a California dial, that's a little too much for my taste. But that Brunswick 40 that they did with Topper Jewelers, which is shipping mid-July, and which is offered in white and black dials with these applied numerals, that harkens back, of course, to that particular heritage, even though there are minimal accents and details that distinguish it from the original, and those are $3,900. But at any case, I think they're already sold out in both colors. Right, there were only 25 examples in white, 25 examples in black. They're shipping mid-July, but they have already been sold out. And they also had perhaps a little more of an upmarket collaboration with Garrick, which is an independent British watchmaker. And that was this particular piece, which featured a round case and kind of like a nice view at 6 o'clock off the balance wheel and the mainspring. But that was decidedly upmarket, right? I think it was almost 25,000 US dollars. So that's an interesting proposition, which didn't excite me nearly as much. Again, what is really wonderful about the Fears Christopher Ward Alliance 01 is the way they pulled their resources together, the way they combined their various expertise and came out with something unique, something that you don't see every day at this price point, and something that offers genuine value and even elegance and luxury um, at that particular price point. So I applaud them for that. When it comes to their collection, you can see that for now, at least, it's heavily slanted towards that cushion case shape, uh, what they call the Brunswick 40. They have it with uh, bracelets in matching material, but oftentimes on straps. They also have a model they call archival, which is a rectangular Art Deco watch. And the reason it's called archival is because it is a design that they uh, withdrew from that historic archive of fears that extend back to the 19th century. Right, as you can see here in the juxtaposition. And uniquely, since this is a limited edition model that they are still selling, that is still available, it is inscribed on the back with one of these years, one of these 175 years of one for each of their existence, and apparently those individual numbers are on a first come first serve basis. So if your year of preference is no longer available, um, I'm sorry, but this is an interesting concept as well. This is the original Fears Art Deco watch from roughly around 1930. And there you go. You have something that is a little more spruced up, a little given an extra level of curvature and kind of bulk and size and thickness to make it a little more modern. So that's their unique piece, which is offered in a limited edition. Most of the line right now consists of the Brunswick, offered in different dial colors and in various combinations of bracelets or strap watches. Um, I like a lot of what I'm seeing here, um, except the hands, which are apparently a trademark for them. So who am I to say anything against? But I love the brushed grain finish on a lot of those dials. The this kind of grenet finish, the textured finish on the champagne dial is pretty nice as well. So, you know, sometimes you have a matte finish like this kind of cotton candy color, candy pink, or a sunburst for the now sold out Queen's Platinum Jubilee edition in violet as well. They also apparently had this sterile version called Brunswick Pure, which had absolutely nothing on the dial except for the blackened hands for hours, minutes, and the small seconds. And that has been sold out to be delivered in February. And apparently they're coming back with a round shaped case, which I guess will be perhaps a smaller version of this that they call Redcliffe. So that should be interesting as well. Gundog, nice to see you, man. Thank you. I can certainly be working harder, Gundog. Um, Eric L. I think so. Um, here's the thing, Eric L. In every other watch, and that I think attests to the the level of individual care they put into their watches. Again, I haven't done any business with them. I don't have one of their watches, and I'm not in any way endorsed by them either. But with every watch, they actually offer a sapphire case back at an additional cost of 250 pounds sterling, uh, including the VAT. So I'm I'm not sure, but I'm guessing this could be an option with the Alliance 01 too, since the hallmarks, as they have put it, um, are going to be very discreet and on the inside of the lugs rather than the case back. So maybe you should be able to get a sapphire case back on these as well, which is an option, which is a level of customization they offer in their usual fare in their Brunswick watches. And on that uh, note, by the way, um, the premium is very slight once again, right? Fears usually sells watches when you look at it in dollars. Let's do it in pounds because that's what we know. The Alliance 01 jumping hour watch. Look, the Brunswick 40 with the Salmon dial, excluding the VAT, it's basically 2,800 in pounds sterling, and including the VAT, it's 3,350 in pounds sterling. Whereas the Alliance watch is 3,950 including the VAT, and basically 3,300 excluding the VAT. So really, you have a 500 pound upcharge from the standard movement moving up to the jumping hour complication, which once again is not very easy to come by, and certainly not at this price point. Orange Hand, I'm assuming you just joined the stream because I have actually said these. I don't know if you were offering this as a correction, but thank you for sharing in either case. I will take a short break and I will be right back. But this can be also an opportunity, by the way. I will send you the StreamYard link. So if any of you wants to join the conversation, feel free to jump on. I'll be right back. I'll be back momentarily. All right, welcome back. Yeah, no worries, man. No worries. I introduced it, in fact, as the first collaboration again, supported and made possible by the relatively new alliance of British um, watch and clock makers. And I have mentioned that it does have the CO9 caliber and featuring a design and complication that was not previously available in Fears's offerings at all. And I actually did make the connection as well to the very popular Christopher Ward C1 Belcanto as well, which of course is based on a modified version of that CO9 jumping hour movement to enable that striking at the top of the hour. So it's part and parcel of all of those things. I will also post the link on Twitter. I don't know why I missed that. Because I was planning to open it up in that way. Sorry about that. Let's see. Sorry about that, guys. I have to post this link. Almost there. Uh, mm. Uh, okay, my most sincere apologies. Sorry about that. So we talked a little bit about this new Alliance 01 watch. That's a collaboration between Fears and Christopher Ward, two British watchmakers. One, and this is Fears, that traces its history back to the 19th century, but that unfortunately had to close in mid 70s, only to be revived more recently. and their offerings are usually at that level of affordable luxury, which, as I said, you can perhaps, pardon me, associate in the Swiss scene with brands like Maurice Lacroix or Frédéric Constant. So at that price point between $4,000 to $6,000. And that is, I think, an increasingly interesting bracket, an increasingly interesting price point, which more watchmakers should focus, because it's quickly left behind by some others like Tag Heuer, like Omega, which have recently not really produced anything new or interesting, which have not really made any improvements in the last years, but have raised their prices excessively in what I consider to be a desperate attempt to upmarket their products. So increasingly, I think it's important to pay attention to brands like Fears and like others that are trying to fill that gap. Um, and of course, again, if you are from the British Isles, if you do want to put if you want to support British watchmaking, and if you want to put your money where your mouth is, this is a great opportunity to do that, because the limited edition of these 50 pieces will only be offered to members of the British Watch and Clockmakers Alliance, and that is something that you can achieve at £55 a year, and it comes with other um, perks and benefits as well. So it's a very interesting collaboration that allows you to also buy a stake in a way in this revival of British watchmaking, which includes, of course, as a member of the audience is mentioning there, Bill Ackman just invested 50 million into Bremont. Bremont is another brand, of course, that is trying to fill that gap. Again, make sure that you become a member if you would like, and if you're interested in buying this watch, of the Alliance of British Clock and Watchmakers by Thursday midnight, because they will be sending out the links which will allow you exclusive access to purchase this watch in the morning of January 27th on Friday. Again, Fears kind of puts the finishing touch on these watches. It is encased in a slightly larger version of their Brunswick 40, 40.5 millimeters in diameter in this case. It carries primarily their branding on the dial, but it will be marked with proper engravings of the Alliance of Christopher Ward, as well as the number of your limited edition discreetly inside the lugs. And finally, of course, it is operated by, it is made possible by Christopher Ward's C09 jumping hour caliber that is built on SW200, which is a Sellita clone of the ETA. So that is the important caveat, although I think still doesn't cancel out the fact that they offer this sort of prestige complication at this particular price point, right? Really, when you think about it, you have a perpetual calendar, you have and perpetual calendar chronograph. You have chiming watches that are exemplified by minute repeaters, and you have the jumping hour, right? These are really some of the prestige complications that come to mind. So for something like that, to have this under 4,000 pounds sterling, including VAT, including the taxes, and right under 3,300 pounds sterling, excluding the VAT, if you want to import this from abroad. Um, this is a great option, and I think it makes for a very elegant and original watch. Again, that classic cushion case gives it an element of dynamism, of muscularity, whereas everything that goes on in the dial, the various finishes like the sunburst finish, um, on the periphery of the dial, the radial guilloche at the center of the dial, which is stepped to include that printing of the minutes in silver on that ring, and the ring that demarcates the center of the dial, as well as the smaller ring at 12 o'clock, right under the Fierce branding, that secures the jumping hour, are both hand mirror polished and hand finished. So that adds another level of interplay, another level of visual interest to the dial, as well as the shades of deep red and silver that dominate the color palette of this piece, from the stainless steel case to, of course, the silver printing of the minutes and the branding. Again, I'm a huge fan of their Brunswick 40 by and large, even though I think that is a bridge too far for me to to get to that 3,000 plus level for what is essentially a Sellita movement, right? A manual winding ETA 7001 specifically. And I know that they do the final finishing, and I know they are also at a slight markup offering a sapphire case back as well, if that's what you choose. However, I think that price point is a little too much for me from my standpoint, but I do appreciate that they're bringing a different level, a different option for affordable quality watches at that price point. So I can't blame them too much for that. Hey, ABC.
Hey, how's it going, bro?
Great, man. Nice to see you. I was hoping that someone like you would come on. I mean, between Mr. Thomas Burnett and you, those are the heavyweights of my British audience. So I like this.
Oh, you're too kind. Well, you got the professor as well. He's also very much into high
Oh,
class watches and
well,
niche pieces as well.
the professor is a cosmopolitan being. You can find him in the UK as much as in any other part of the world, and I consider him at a rank above me even. So I didn't want to just say he's a member of the audience. That's why. But yes,
Ah, of course.
the professor resides in the UK as well. You're absolutely right. Fries,
How
welcome.
are you? How is everything?
Great, man. It's nice to see you. I don't know if you have been following either the Premiership or boxing, but a lot of interesting things are happening from, from your part of the world. So I don't know. Which team do you support in the Premiership, or do you support any at all?
Yeah, I don't really support any team. Uh, I just, I part of me wants Arsenal to win this year because it's about time someone new won. Is
Okay.
my That's my thing. I
Old
like,
new, really. Old new, since
yeah, I
Arsenal
mean,
is like, it's
I,
not Leicester that we're talking about here, right?
yeah, but when you think about what Leicester did, the top four, top five were all in transition, and I think that's still the case for this time round. Maybe not Man City, but Liverpool are in transition in terms of their squad. Not necessarily their manager. They're in some form of transition because they haven't replaced Sadio Mane adequately, in my view. And Chelsea, they've had a bit of a turbulent time with what, three managers in 2 seasons, in 2 years.
I mean,
And
Chelsea is a very interesting example, that because they have been completely devastated. I think the manager change was for the Abramovich era just a matter of course. It was like a daily occurrence,
yeah,
whether you win the Champions League or bring us two titles in quick succession. If you perform slightly under expectations, you're gone, no question. So we don't even know how that will reflect in the policy of the new owners. But I think that's even more of a sea change, because you have the administration change completely. And I'm not essentializing here, but for Abramovich specifically, Chelsea was a pet project. So for the longest time, he just injected a lot of money into it without expecting anything back. Whereas American owners, even though they have spent lavishly so far, are much more invested in monetary gain, for financial returns, ROI, as we say, when it comes to their investment. I mean, you see that most blatantly in Manchester United, and the way that the Glazers have been lining their pockets. And why not? Right? They bought Manchester United as an investment, and that's one of the cash making machines, even with the lack of sporting success. Between Real, Barcelona, and maybe Bayern, you know, Manchester United, even without the success, is making as much, if not more, money. So it's an interesting time for Chelsea, maybe even more precarious than Liverpool or any other team.
well, I think with the Glazers, initially it was seen as some kind of leverage against debts that they had, them owning Manchester United. Kind of they were able to keep their creditors at bay to quite a large extent. I don't know how over the sort of 10 or 15 years beyond that, it's kind of seen them in good stead financially. I imagine it has, because Premiership has just gone exponential in terms of revenue. I'd say that, I mean, Manchester City, okay, they're in a way state owned with the Nahyan family.
That's right.
Um, I'm just wondering why no other, maybe I remember years ago, this was about 10 years ago, there was talk of a Dubai consortium buying Leeds United, but that never happened. That never materialized. So there's no Qatari interest in the Premier League yet. I mean, you've got Saudi Arabia who put their hat into the ring with Newcastle. So yeah, this is well, some call it sports washing, some call it investment, or just buying success. Chelsea were the first to be accused of that, then Manchester City afterwards. So but Leicester just went and just disproved all of that. That money will always buy you success. Just that or it just happened to be that all of the top five clubs were in transition of some sort. I think we're kind of seeing that now. Manchester United, well, they're nowhere near contenders yet for the
Yeah.
title, but you've got Manchester City, Liverpool, well, they're ninth or something, which is crazy. So I think, if Arsenal win, good for them.
So you have very adeptly dodged the question. What
Who
team
do
do
I
you
support?
actually support?
Yeah,
None at all.
I don't really support any team.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. When you said really support, I thought there is one that has your sympathies, but you don't care that much. You are not really invested on it ultimately.
No, it would be nice. I think it would be poetic if Arsenal won this year because I think it's about time a team with that history and heritage and the football that they're playing, I think they deserve the title this year.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. People keep saying, and still they keep saying, "Hey, they're playing against Manchester City twice, and we have not yet seen City at their best, and we have not seen Arsenal at their worst, in a sense, right? We have not seen them really face uh, genuine adversity in the sense that their only extended injury was Gabriel Jesus. But I mean, Eddie Nketiah plays like a better striker than Gabriel Jesus. Honestly, at this point, maybe not as great as a link-up player, but
Yeah.
I think as a goal scorer, he has started proving his mettle, which is pretty impressive. And again, I'm trying to I'm trying to tone down a lot of great things that I can say about Arsenal as a Spurs fan. So it hurts me a little bit, but I have to, as a fan of football, man. I mean, when I see Bukayo Saka, when I see Martin Odegaard, when I see Granit Xhaka finally, playing at the level consistently that he has shown in his potential over the years. As a fan of the game, it puts a smile on my face. As a Spurs fan, goddamn to hell, and I hope they can win the title. But they're not only potentially 5 points up with a game in hand, so potentially 8 points that separates them from Manchester City. But I think they're at the top of the league by the quality that they have displayed on the field.
And
And
consistency.
yeah, and the reason we are saying that, they have not faced real adversity is because they have not given that opportunity to most of their opponents.
Yeah,
I mean,
agreed.
they're just playing so far at another level. But let's see them against Manchester City. Still, I think they're doing well. Here's an interesting point from Orange Hand that can help us get back to watches. I wonder what the effect of the downturn in the gray market for the big brands will have on small brands like Fears. I'm not sure the market for these kinds of watches at 3,000 is sustainable. Um, do you have anything to say about that, ABC?
I'm not familiar with Fears as a brand in any way, shape, or form. Actually, I must admit.
Okay. So Fears is in a way a Phoenix brand, as they like to say. So it's a heritage brand that was actually founded in the mid 19th century, but it
Okay.
was lost to the quartz crisis in
Hmm.
1970s, and recently it was revived as this affordable luxury brand, basically that is still based in Bristol, that sources a lot of its materials and components from other countries, from other European countries. I don't know if the UK counts as European anymore, but let's just leave that as red. um, and they finish everything in the UK. The movements they use, by and large, are based on ETA and Celita. And yes, they do finish it and rhodium plate it and whatever, but that's
Right.
my sticking point when it comes to their pricing, right? Because it is in US dollars, it's like 35 to 4,000. In pounds, it's like 3,000 pounds or a little more, depending on the exclusivity and material of the model. So
So for me, that's Tudor, Breitling, and some Omega money in terms
yes,
of some of the pieces. So
on the secondary market, especially, yes.
yeah, so the value proposition kind of disappears on me slightly. It kind of goes away when you've got brands that will, you can service them anywhere in the world. They're well known. If you want to look at resale value as part of the equation, then that's another factor to consider. But I mean, I just because when I think of like Phoenix brands, I'd say the best example is Blancpain, isn't it? That's one of the main Phoenix brands that are around today. Obviously, you've got Alang and Zona, but I think that's out of the price. Their prices are out of the reach of most people. So, I mean, I don't know much about many micro brands. I've seen some micro brands. There's some Japanese ones. Some people are looking at. I think Bear and Archie were looking at a good few months ago. You've got, of course, the Swiss brands.
Mhm.
Like Laurent Ferrier. You've also got brands like what's the Dutch one? Is it Gronfeld?
Grunefeld, yeah. There are other Dutch
Gronfeld,
brands,
yeah.
but that's the high horological one. It's the two
Yeah.
brothers, right?
Yeah, okay, so that's two brothers. So and harboring as well.
Yes, they're Austrian, and that's again. Look, I mean, now you're naming interesting stuff because except when it comes to, and that would have been my argument. I wanted to put it out there that they're a Phoenix brand, right? Because that's a word that gets thrown around a lot in the watchmaking space, in the horological space. On the other hand, I think it's a little bit of a misnomer because what brand isn't a Phoenix brand, and ultimately what brand is actually the same as it was in the 18th or 19th century? What brand has that kind of consistency from the time that they weren't even, where wristwatches were not even a thing, right? I mean, wristwatches became a thing in the interwar years and really took off in the post-war years, in the 20th century. So
Yeah.
Phoenix brand thing gets thrown around, I think, a little too fast and too easily to denigrate a couple of houses that do genuinely original work. And the only non-Phoenix brands nowadays are the independents, and even the independents have, when you look at it historically and horologically, and even from the design perspective, they all have a certain trajectory. They all follow with the inspiration and design cues and the horological heritage that they take from elsewhere. I mean, the great example, for example, for instance, with the Grönefeld. I mean, those were, yeah, they do great work. They do very original work. They put the Netherlands on the map, on the horological map. But they cut their teeth at Renault et Papy, which was basically the high horological workshop of Audemars Piguet, quickly integrated from their initial um, establishment. So it's no one
Interesting.
no one just pops up out of nowhere and as completely original.
So does Phoenix brand have to have been dormant at some point because of Quartz crisis, or other than that, or the world wars, in order for them to be considered as such?
I guess, from a narrative perspective, you want that moment of supposed extinction and rebirth, right? That's kind of the mythological figure, the phoenix. So Blancpain was actually a great example, right? Blancpain had a lot of hiatuses in its existence. Well, a couple of hiatuses, let's say, and most famously, it was revived by Jean-Claude Biver and Piguet in and made their mark in the 90s with these like high horological or complicated watches specifically against quartz, right? With that motto, we have never made a quartz watch in our history and we never will, kind of
Hmm.
thing. So I guess, yeah, Alain Gonzone makes sense, but Vacheron Constantin, for example, they had their continuous existence. They never ceased production. So I guess they, no matter how much they changed and been transformed and changed ownership over the course of the 20th century, they can't be considered a Phoenix brand, I guess. But I'm just saying also, just the terminology I don't particularly like. I don't think it has analytical power, so to speak. I mean, what are we
So
trying to say by saying something is a Phoenix brand ultimately?
I think it's the fact that it's re-emerged, it's revived, it's rejuvenated. I mean, Breitling, as far as I understand, would also come under that category.
Yes, to the point of selling the design of their most iconic watch to Zinn,
To
right?
Zen, yeah, yeah.
um no, certainly I think, if it is just a descriptive, sure, but I've seen it used, for example, to simply disqualify Alain Gonzone or say Chapek from being seriously considered as what they offer. Not
Oh, see. So it's seen as a slightly discrediting label.
right. And I'm not asking for special consideration for Lange. I'm not asking for special consideration for Chapek. I'm not asking for special consideration for Fears. But a lot of times people use that term to dismiss them altogether, saying like, "Well, who cares? It's a Phoenix brand."
Mm, yeah, I would say where possible, and if you can afford it, buy what you love, be it Alain Gonzona, be it Epigeon, be it a lesser known brand like Laurent Ferrier, and other than them, Kari Voutilainen as well. That's also one of the, well, that's not a Phoenix brand. That's considered more micro brand, if I understand the terms correctly. But people are using the terms almost interchangeably.
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, again, I think that's a good criticism in a way, to ask for a little bit more precision, a little bit more specificity in the way we use language. But I want to go back to something you were saying earlier, and that can be a concern when you are buying a watch, because again, we are in times of economic uncertainty, if not outright austerity. So as much as we want to buy what we love, and as much as we end up buying what we love primarily, we never know if we will actually have the chance, maybe even privilege, of keeping these forever and passing them to the next generation. So sometimes something such as, resale value and the retention of the financial value can be uh, a sticking point. I completely understand that. And when it comes to uh, brands like Fears, especially, and comparatively speaking, even to brands like Lange and Chapek, because you are moving on to another segment, another price point, where you might say, hey, horologically speaking, in terms of the inherent value of the watch, I wouldn't even compare contemporary Lange with today's Patek, right? I think Lange is obviously at a higher level, but
Yeah.
when it comes to resale value, can I say the same thing? Lange has been enjoying increased value retention in the market over the last few years.
Yeah.
But when it comes to that it's not Patek or Rolex, and it will probably never be because of the downturn in the market, right? If you want to sell a Lange watch that you bought for near six figures, let's say you get a datograph today, chances are you won't be able to get more than 80,000 for it, right?
Yeah.
So which can be considered a significant loss, right? You pay low six figures to get one
Of
of the
course.
best hand wound chronographs in the game. But if there something goes wrong, who knows? Your business goes bankrupt, you have a serious health problem in the family, and you really have to get rid of that watch. That's a loss. Whereas if you most Pateks, you might even be able to, if you have the privilege to get them at retail, you might even make a handsome profit when you turn around and sell it when it comes to contemporary stuff.
Yeah, and Patek, I believe, have taken advantage of the hype movement that's swept the watch world, especially over the last 5 or so years. And who would begrudge them that? Who could blame them? When people are when your watches are selling for 6, 7 figures in auctions, and you're getting co-branding with Tiffany and the likes. I think they've really set they've kind of created a gulf between them and they pulled away from their competition more so than people were saying, oh, Rolex, they're kind of on the heels of Patek. No, I don't think so.
No,
Especially talking about Jay-Z's, Patek, and other people. So yeah, that's they really
that
just
I
gone
think
leaps and bounds.
I think that analogy is wrong in two different ways. One, you mentioned it. Rolex has certain pieces that are really exclusive and bejeweled and that really appeal to that sort of hype driven celebrity stardust sprinkled kind of customer. But a lot of those customers would rather go with something else anyways, Patek, Audemars Piguet, and whatever. Increasingly, apparently, Vacheron Constantin, specifically the 222, Michael B. Jordan was wearing it. Even the Breitling endorsee, Brad Pitt, was wearing a Vacheron Constantin 222, which is very interesting. But that being said, from the other point of view, ABC, it's Patek that tries to be like Rolex, because Patek is compared to Rolex's numbers and the revenue they generate. Patek is away by hundreds of country miles. It's not. I mean, they're not even in the same orbit. Rolex sells watches at the level of their next 5 competitors, right? You combine Audemars Piguet, Patek, Cartier, Omega, and you still don't reach Rolex numbers. So and Rolex revenue either. So in one level, yes, Rolex is perhaps not as elite and exclusive when it comes to uh, the average model compared to Patek. On the other hand, as a company, uh, Patek would be honored to have a fraction of the success that Rolex has had over the years, and has still uh, does still have in terms of its domination of the market, and they're exactly trying that.
Yeah. I mean, watches, they're far more portable asset class as well, especially pandemic onwards. And I mean, like I said, me personally, I've tuned out of Rolex because I can't see myself getting one, especially the modern pieces. Then again, those prices I'm seeing are coming down, and there are definitely, well worth considering if you're in the position to buy. Not a good time to sell. It's a better time to buy because of the downturn. I don't know. Are you considering any modern Rolexes?
Not really. I think I would buy a contemporary Tudor before I get a contemporary Rolex. I've never, there's always every so often there's like a Rolex piece that I'm interested in from the current catalog, like the Explorer in two-tone, like the SD43 in stainless steel. Um, yeah, every so often there will be one or two things, and then ultimately I end up, moving away from it for one reason or another. Right? I mean, there are pieces that, if someone offered it to you, um, or gifted it to you, of course you wouldn't kick it out of bed. Like, I mean, if I was offered to buy a precious metal Daytona on an Oyster Flex, I think I would jump on that opportunity for sure. Because what if I don't like it, right? I'm sure I can move it quite easily. I would want to like it. I do increasingly like the Daytona, especially not on a bracelet, whether it's the leather band or the Oyster Flex. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, what I was looking at was the 40 mil ceramic sub date, because I've noticed they are coming down in the UK. I mean, we get
you mean the Black
a
Bay?
rough deal. We get a
Oh, no,
rough deal
ceramic.
on
Ceramic as in the bezel. Sorry, I was
ceramic.
like,
Yeah, no,
Rolex
so
doesn't have ceramics. Sorry for the brain fart, man. It's my fault.
no, at all. So that's, they're approaching £9,000, which has been the best price for quite a while. And the and at one point, I'd say about a year and a half to 2 years ago, the pre-ceramics were actually very close on the heels of the ceramics.
Right.
The 16610 was literally a hair's width from the 116610 LN. So it's then it pulled away a bit. I think probably with the bringing out of the new ceramic, the 41 mil, and then things, obviously the market has had a bit of a downturn. So it's an interesting time, and you're seeing more and more articles about the watch market on Forbes, Financial Times, and other than that. And it's good to see the professor has joined.
Hi,
So, hi,
Professor.
hey guys. Hey, Laura, Dave,
How
How are
are
you
you?
Lucy.
doing?
Hi. All right, all right. Listening to your interesting discussion.
Oh, thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's good that the professor joined, because together we we have talked a lot when it comes to the state of the market. We have talked a lot about how um, how especially the advent of smartwatches has more or less obliterated or is on its way to obliterate the sub $35,000 or the sub 3,000 Swiss franc watch category. So what Orange Hand was saying earlier is an absolutely relevant question, and it's not only a problem with small brands per se, or like upstarts, so to speak, like Fears, who are trying to enter the segment of affordable luxury, but it's even a problem for more established brands like Tag Heuer, like Omega, which are trying to desperately escape that segment of the market. Although, from my standpoint, not necessarily by providing a better product, but simply trying to sell the same thing at a higher markup. So, again, I think it's a bigger problem than just Fears is facing, and I'm trying my hardest not to jump onto a cheap pun based on the brand's name, but it's really something that a lot of other brands fear as well.
With no tears. If anyone can get the 1980s music reference.
What do you think, Professor? Do you think brands like Fears, Christopher Ward, Bremont, do they have a chance? Do they have a way into this market in mid to long term, or are they lost causes?
Right. You brought up a brand which just today they announced that they received a considerable amount of money as equity into their firm, into the firm's operations, and that's Bremont. One of the largest hedge fund owners has invested about 48 million pounds into Bremont.
Bill Ackman, apparently, right?
Yeah, Ackman. And look, what's happening is what you both have described, and I think you have been for quite some time said the same, and I said the same, and ABC and others. I mean, obviously there is there is this hypeness about watches, which is partly explainable due to the availability of funds, liquidity, fascination. The 30, 40-year-olds have made some money and they want to park it somewhere. Social media has tremendously contributed to that. YouTube as well, hence what we're doing. And others, there is a lot of repetitive groupthink behavior. One says Pepsi, the other says Coke, one says Coke, the other says, and they all think alike and they all repeat themselves over and over again. I mean, it's very difficult. It's like where we live nowadays, we all kind of try to mimic each other. And you want to feel you're part of a community, so everybody tries to buy, Daytona and whatever. And, they say Patek, they say, oh, what a wonderful brand. 95% of them don't even have a clue what they're talking about. And a lot has to do with branding and marketing. These firms are there to sell money, to sell watches, to sell their, pass the watch to the next generation type of thing. And, the music community, hip hop community, Patek was not was an unknown brand for most people. And
But
eventually, what will happen to some of them, which Lord, you have discussed with you sometimes, for instance, Chapek will become Patek. Huh?
What do
Um,
you mean? What do you mean by that?
they will be uplifted by all these buyers who are looking for the next noisy thing, right?
Okay.
Patek is too noisy now. Now everybody is singing the same tune. There will be, you mentioned it just now. ABC mentioned some of the names. These names will be hyped again and again and again. Kari Voutilainen, Chapek, a few that MBNF, and so forth. As a trend in watchmaking, and because there is still a lot of liquidity, and people want to feel special, unique. That's I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but the Swiss have grabbed people's attention. Well, what we don't know is what will the young generation do. But it's interesting to find all these people who are now discussing watches far more than 20 years ago and 15 years ago. And it partly has to do with all of the above. I'm not unique in this. You have talked about it, Lord, and ABC and so forth. So, it is what it is.
I mean, I think when people think of Patek Philippe, they probably think of the Nautilus, and they probably think that's the
Yeah.
only type of watch they make, the Aquanaut, the Nautilus. Whereas the first Patek Philippe I ever saw was a golden lips with the blue dial, and the next one I saw after that was a Calatrava in yellow gold. So this was because my father was involved in the watch trade over many years, and this is something that I've been exposed to from a younger age and for a long time. So, whereas when you like, just like what when you think of why people like Rolex, it's not because it doesn't, for me, capture the essence of what Rolex used to be. The fact that they were
Yeah.
versatile watches, they were obtainable, they were modular, they were customizable. Whereas now they've become pieces of bling.
Yeah, exactly. And what I find fascinating in this, my recent involvement in this community, is that it is kind of a community of um, providing an identity, but also for many of them, providing a self satisfaction that, I have this collection, I have this watch. Let me show you the watch. I don't want to show my watches to anybody. It's very private. I don't want to brag. I don't want to show. I don't want to tell people what I know. Um, you know. So I'm
That-
not sure. I'm
I'm not
not
sure if I
sure.
can. I'm not sure if I can agree with that. I think you have been very generous with sharing your knowledge on this kind of platform. So
You're very kind. To yes, maybe to yeah, no, okay, maybe I exaggerate, but I'm saying for me it's not very becoming to you know share. Oh, I got this watch. Let me show it to you. I think there is a generational development. The new generation, Lord, wants to demonstrate. It's a sign of wealth, success, notwithstanding the fact that many of these watches are ostensibly a sign of success. Yet YouTube creates this behavior. Oh, you have I don't know this watch. Oh, you're not worthy. You have this brand. Oh, you're very worthy. It's what ABC was saying. Um, and this is something new, which is self-perpetuating. And we'll get into this rabbit hole. I see a lot of people buying, large quantities of watches, and
Of course,
they're very
and
unhappy
also,
people.
right. I think, look, that is an eternal question, right? Does wealth and possessions make you happy or not? Can certain kinds of possessions make you happy or not? I think that's a bigger question than just the social media age, and it's a question that certainly transcends the horological space as well. But when it comes to the specificity, the medium specificity, as it were, of the social media horological space, I think you are putting your finger on a very particular kind of problem, because one, the medium not only encourages, but I think makes narcissism and attention seeking as the minimal uh, price of entry. This is for YouTube, which again I'm guilty of it, and Instagram as well. And most importantly, when it specifically gets to watches, it encourages a lot of people to follow others' interests without really taking the time to think about their own interests, their own preferences, and what they actually like. My specific example will be about wrist size and sizes of watches, like case diameters, right? So a lot of people, one, just look at spec sheets to decide what size is good for them, what is too small, what is too large, and then they also get extremely offended and personally uh, slighted based on what other people say. Oh, that watch is too big for your wrist, this watch is
Yeah,
too bad for. And I understand why people take those kind of things personally, right? As someone who encounters it on a daily basis, I understand it can get under your skin at a certain time, unless you have a very tough skin. On the other hand, that really disallows people in a way to go and seek out, hey, maybe I do like a small dainty watch on my wrist, because I think of it as a discreet, elegant dress piece that would actually disappear under the cuff of my shirt. Or, hey, you think it's a little too big on my wrist? That's fine. That's your opinion. But I'm actually wearing this as a larger than life sporty piece, and I'm usually wearing it, when I'm wearing short sleeves, or, god damn it, tank tops, or no shirts, at the beach. So it doesn't really matter. And when you think of proportions, what might look, again, we are coming back to the medium, right, of the wrist shots and wrist rolls. When you zoom in on the wrist, certain things can look really big. In real life, they're actually not that big. And that's why you wear the watch. You wear the watch on your wrist for you to enjoy, for you to create and record certain kinds of memories, for you to generate emotions, feelings, and perhaps sometimes even inspiration and ideas. You are not wearing watches to take wrist shots of them that other people will like or dislike on social media, right? That's a very niche experience that should ideally constitute a very small part of how you integrate those watches into your lifestyle.
Yeah, I'd say the watch community brings out the same human behaviors that you see in all walks of life, be it companies, be it
exactly.
religious institutions, be it the corridors of power. You'll always get the passive aggressive ones. You'll always get the ones who are mavericks. You'll always get the bullies. You'll always get the ones who are kind of insecure. You'll always get the ones who seek validation. And it's just funny how it manifests itself in all walks of life.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're all humans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll see. So it's funny how the kind of there are no right or wrong answers. You say the one who wants to please everyone. You'll see uh, those kinds of traits in people. So, I mean, for me, it's something that I love. I marvel at the engineering of it. I like what a watch can do, what it can tell me, considerably more than how it looks. I like I'm definitely a function over form kind of guy because I look for a watch's legibility as opposed to uh, the aesthetics in terms of the what makes it beautiful, so to speak. So, but that's me. I've been exposed to watches from a young age, and that's what I like. And it just makes me laugh when you listen to people who've only come into watches in the past 2-3 years and they're buying Rolexes. Okay, good for them. All the power to them. I don't begrudge them that. I wouldn't buy the pieces that they buy if I were to be in the same position as them. But that's that's my prerogative, and that's their prerogative.
Yeah, no, I think this is aptly said. Of course, some of them, you know, to their defense as well, some of them are good people, and
Of
um,
course.
they're new entrants to the hobby. Um, but what I find interesting in this community is that people are demonstrating a lot, instead of being, for instance, I lived in countries and cultures where, yes, you can either be ostentatious or also wealth has to be kept to one's self. I don't want to show, as I said before, people the watches I have. It's just so, yes, I'll say what I wear, but even that I find it, a little bit personally offensive. Why do I have to share with people what I wear? What does this tell me in the world about my choice? Okay, I have a watch, it's expensive. Doesn't say anything else. Does it say I'm smart? Not really. Successful? Not really. Nobody knows what each of us is doing. Um, it is a bit of a to use a term of a 19th century economist, ostentatious, conspicuous consumption, you know. Um, and suddenly everybody has discovered Patek Philippe, They're all discovering the
Yeah.
calibers. They're all quoting the calibers. 5305, 5270. Oh, no, it's the platinum. No, it's my God, I mean, how many hours are they spending on these websites? They're only making wealthier the Sterns and their super yachts and their private planes.
Yeah, which is great. More power to them. Um, I mean, it's again. I think we are returning. We are kind of circling back to this point, and I have about maybe a little more than 5 minutes at this time of the day because I need to get back to work. Um, that's
Is that because your coffee's cold?
no. I did that a while ago. That's when I took my
That's
first
a
break.
Rod Stewart reference.
I don't know
My coffee's
anything about
cold.
Ross Stewart.
My coffee's cold, and I'm getting told that I've got to get back to work. So
Nice.
that's
Okay, but I don't know. You're embarrassing me in front of my UK audience, but I know nothing actually about Rod Stewart's music at all.
oh,
Um,
he's lived a lot of time he spent a lot of time in America. Actually, he's very well known there.
yeah, in California.
Sure.
Many he's some say he's the world's oldest teenager, but he is very well known.
I think that
Almost like Tom Jones.
that moniker belongs to Keith Richards, but yes,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
yeah.
know enough about Rod Stewart to contest that necessarily. Listen, I mean, going back to what opened this discussion, which was to talk a little bit about British watchmaking and the smaller brands trying to carve up their own niche. And I tried to do that through this specific example of Fears Christopher Ward Alliance '01 model, which is actually provided exclusively in a limited run of 50 pieces to members of the Alliance of British Watch and Clockmakers. So you have to sign up as a member at £55 per annum before the end of the day on Thursday, January 26th. You will be sent the link on the 27th to purchase this watch with an exclusive code. So if you're interested, keep that in mind. It's really it's an interesting proposition because it offers a very elegant looking and an edgy jumping hour watch at a price point which is quite rare, if not entirely unique. And that is for this stainless steel watch in 40.5 millimeters in the striking interplay of deep red and silver. That is 39.50 pounds sterling, including the VAT, and 32.92 excluding the VAT if you are going to be ordering it from outside the UK. So I think it's an interesting value proposition for the kind of watch that is hard to find elsewhere, and it's an interesting way to put your money where your mouth is. Sorry for the Freudian slip there. Put your money where your mouth is and support British watchmaking. And I know people from the UK are actually very good in supporting their own. So that is an interesting opportunity for them to get something that is genuinely exclusive, that is quite rare, and that goes to the way of encouraging this alliance between Fears and Christopher Ward. And this is going to be in a line of collaborations that British watch and clock makers are encouraging among their 75 members, and they have just been established. Really, historically speaking, November 2020 is just yesterday, so they are just getting off the ground. And if you want a special watch, and if you want to support British horology, this is your chance.
So does the jump hour enable you to change the date? Is that what it's used for? Is it just to keep the hour at the same angle past the hour marker?
Oh no! So this is the minutes ring, ABC. So at the top of the hour, it basically clicks and jumps to the next hour. So this is the hour.
Oh, the time is
hour. This will
3:43. Okay.
This will click to 4, and apparently the Christopher Ward movement, which is caliber C09, which is built on SW200, the Celita caliber, apparently has this like camera shutter like click, which seems very pleasant to me. So at the top of the hour, that's what you hear, and what you see is that 3 jumping to 4.
And is it 12 hours or 24?
12.
12, okay. Interesting.
All right. Any last words, Professor or ABC, if you want to add something before we sign off? Okay, silence. Please upvote this stream. I really appreciate your presence and support. Thank you for being here, and thank you especially ABC and El Profesor for coming on the panel and supporting me and enriching this discussion. Again, once more, check it out. This is going to be made available this Friday. And if you're actually interested in buying, you have to become a member of the Alliance of British Watch and Clockmakers before midnight on Thursday. So get on it. I will be with you at 8 p.m. my time, so in less than 6 hours. Again, and until then, I bid you adieu. Take care, friends.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you.
Thank you.